I'd like to call to order the meeting of the Centerville Board of Education for Monday, December 14, 2020. Call the roll, please.
Mrs. Dernbaugh?
Here.
Dr. Rohr?
Here.
Mr. Schroyer?
Here.
Megan Sparks?
Here.
Mr. Dahl?
Here. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all. Seated. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is to approve the agenda as presented. Motion, please.
So moved.
Second.
Call the roll, please.
Mrs. Dernbaugh?
Yes.
Dr. Rohr?
Yes.
Mr. Schroyer?
Yes.
Megan Sparks?
Yes.
Mr. Dahl?
Yes. Next item on the agenda is a hearing of the public. Board of Education provides this opportunity for public comment before any action items are taken. For having this meeting remotely, citizens were asked to contact the board's central office to indicate their desire to speak at the meeting during this time period. Speakers, please provide your name and address. Minors, only provide your name. No need to provide your address. Please keep your comments to no more than 3 minutes as we have other business to conduct. The board will listen to all comments and generally not engage in discussion. Refer any necessary follow-up to the superintendent. Board members can be contacted through the board offices or through their email addresses. So, Dr. Henderson, we have at least one or two, is that correct?
That's correct, Mr. Dahl. We had two individuals contact us about being here in person to speak, and we had another individual who had some health concerns and issues, and I believe sent in a video. So we're going to do the two in-person ones first, and then we'll share the screen, and you'll be able to hear the video after that.
Yes, sir. Go right ahead.
Okay, thank you very much. My name is Brian Holman. I really appreciate the opportunity to speak tonight. I live at 200 Weller Avenue in Centerville with my wife and two boys. As a parent of an elementary student, I've been truly impressed with the teachers and staff at Klein ever since my son joined there about a year ago. Their can-do attitude, professionalism, and genuine concern for the kids is extraordinary. I'm very, very thankful that my son is at that school. After the switch to remote learning, it became very clear to me that remote learning cannot match in-person education for most kids, and my son is no exception to that. I do not feel my son's learning is progressing under the current system, and in many ways, I feel he's treading water. It's not for lack of effort by the teachers and the staff and my family. The teachers and staff at Klein have really gone out of their way to be active, to engage the students. They have found creative ways to try to reach out. But I believe that student engagement is not effective enough at a distance through a screen. My wife and I have been very diligent through the younger years of our two boys of limiting their screen time. And now it feels like we're sticking them in front of a screen for hours a day. We know that that's not healthy, and it's simply no replacement for in-person interaction with their peers and teachers. My wife and I both have full-time jobs, which are not remote. We've used vacation, PTO time, tutoring services, day camps to provide supervision while while our son has been in the fully remote mode, and also during the Wednesdays of the 4/5 schedule. My wife and I are blessed with some flexibility in our jobs, thanks to our employers, to be able to pull that off. I cannot imagine how it is for families with much less flexibility in their job, and also especially for single parents. How they keep their kids engaged during these remote sessions is a bit of a mystery to me. As a concerned parent and taxpayer, I guess my main question is, what metric will be used to confirm the resumption to in-person education on the 19th? I'm assuming that it's tied to staff availability, and I fully understand that. I can't imagine the human resources nightmares that have gone on during this pandemic, especially in an organization as big as this. But I hope if there is a change to resumption on the 19th, that the district will be very clear and precise with the public in terms of the reasons why. Schools are essential in the health and development of our kids. And just like other schools in this area and businesses that have remained open during the current time with the current protocols, I hope that Centerville can open up and do so as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your comments.
Thank you.
Dan, that computer's muted.
You can't hear. Dan,
Cleaned it.
There we go. Sorry.
Sorry.
Okay.
thank
Sorry.
you.
I'm Angela Cleveland Holacek. I live at 9680 Harbor Town Way in Washington Township. My son attends, I have two sons in middle school. One attends Tower and the other one attends Watts. My one in Watts is in special ed, and that's what I'm here to talk about, is my concerns with special ed. Right now, my son in regular education is getting about 25.5 hours of instructional time. Just my son in special ed, because he cannot access education through online services, he is getting less than that. And generally, I mean, we can speak to specifics about my son's case, but generally, the kids in special ed are getting like 13 hours less of instructional time than what kids that's actually productive instructional time than what kids in regular ed is. That's my opinion of it. I sent out an email to the board spelling it all out more detailed. I did not, unfortunately, get a response, but I did have a conversation in regards with Tom Henderson today. And I think he was a little perplexed in regards to why special ed parents get all anxious about some of this stuff. One is society-wise, there's always discrimination that we're always having to argue against and fight for our kids because we know they deserve it. But then we also have things that happen. I'm going to read you an email I got from Tammy, and just a part of it. It says, eventually we will be on the other side of the pandemic. And IEP teams will review each child's individual data to see if recovery services are needed. If the teams determine a student like Alex, my son, has regressed or shown a loss of skills, which they have not been able to recover in a reasonable amount of time, then the team will decide how to provide the recovery services. Ideally, we would be able to start providing these services in the spring, but it will really depend on the numbers and where we are in the pandemic. To me, That email said, if your kid regresses, not that my kid needs to learn during this 8th grade year, but only if he regresses will he receive services. So I sent out several emails. And now, and I did get another email and had a conversation with Tammy, and she did thank me for the conversation. And she kind of retracted and said recovery services will not only be for students who have regressed, but also students who have missed specifically designed instruction time. And that is important because until you're making up for that time that's lost, you're really discriminating against these kids. And without a plan in place, Dr. Henderson previously, when we all went to remote and stuff, he had options, he had plans. Kids of special ed, or parents of special ed kids, don't have a tangible plan. And it's been a long time that we've been hanging in there. So I'm just really hoping that we can get a plan, because I think our kids deserve it. I think our kids do have a harder time with the inconsistency and the unknown. And our kids still have the ability to learn, and they have the right to learn. So that's what I have to say.
Thanks for coming in. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Shannon will be sharing the video that we received now.
Hello, my name is Laura Lee Hanson. I am student Ricky Hanson's mother. I'm also a teacher formerly, a lawyer, a child of a principal, and sibling to current teachers. I understand and I appreciate so much that you all have been kind enough to hear me by video. I understand this is tough times. It's tough times for all of us, especially for our children who are craving interaction. I would very much request that you look at the online education plan that you just recently started to change. I got a notification about a week and a half ago that there were going to be some changes to online education, but there were no details. I got a notification 24 hours or maybe 28 hours before a decision was needed as to whether we were going to continue online education from the curriculum department, but there were very little details other than the students would be reassigned to an online teacher. When I checked into that, I learned that the online teacher student to teacher ratio is likely to be 40 to 50 to 1 student, and that now there would be less flexibility for both in-class students and for online students, in that the in-class students, if they're sick, they're not going to be able to attend online classes anymore. And as far as the online students, now they're not going to have as much interaction with their teachers. At a ratio of 40 to 50 some to 1, there's not going to be able to be the kind of interaction that Ricky has with his current class of 12 in-person students and 4 online students. Now, of course, we're all online, but even when he's in class, he knows and has relationships with his teacher and with his school community, which gives him a lot of pleasure in a time where our kids aren't having a lot of good things in their life. The current situation, Mrs. Green, the teacher, has done a great job. She interacts with the kids online, and she is not, when I say interact, she keeps them on task. She does this through questions directed specifically at them. They have to stay engaged and on top of things in order to meet her expectations. Because of this, Ricky does a great job, a much better job than he could do, for instance, from March to May, because it's so much more interactive. It keeps his attention better, and while it's not a perfect system, I don't think anybody could do it better than how Mrs. Green and Centerville have been doing it in the last 4 months. When I inquired further, not only did I find out about this new online switch, that there was going to be a 50-to-1 ratio, or 40-to-1, something in that ballpark, I also found out that they were going to take away at least a third of the education time. Right now, I think my son gets over 3 hours of education a day. And I'm not talking breakout rooms. I'm not talking interactions with Mrs. Ellinger or any of his other assistant teachers. I'm talking about solid instruction from Mrs. Green. From the couple of district personnel that I talked to, that amount is going to be cut down anywhere from 2/3 that amount to half that amount. This is not going to retain the interest of our little boys and girls in 4th grade. They have to have interaction. In this pandemic, this time of loneliness, they need it. For our little kids that have ADD and ADHD, they're not going to be able to be as successful because they're not getting treated the same as other kids if they choose online. Finally, it treats our little ones who can't come to school because of a medical disability differently than other children. My little one was born at 31 weeks. He was 2.5 pounds. And when we stepped out of the hospital with him 5 weeks later, his neonatologist told us, don't you ever do anything to compromise his lungs. He is under doctor's orders not to be around smoke, not to be around try not to get respiratory illnesses. We have no choice on that. He is coming to online because of that advice. And yet now he is going to be treated more poorly than another kid who could go to online because he didn't have any respiratory issues. And finally, my child is a doubly exceptional student. He's both involved in the gifted program and the IEP program for assistance. My child is smart, but he also needs that interaction with teachers to help him with the disabilities that he has. By cutting down his and other IEP students' interactions with teachers, by both cutting the student-teacher ratio actually doubling the student-teacher ratio or more, and by having by necessity to cut down on interactions with students because the number of students one teacher is teaching, it is going to really negatively affect his education. Now here's my questions. Why is this necessary? We're 4 months in. Think about it. The reason that we went to online was because the district was having so many teachers and kids out that it made getting subs difficult. We know children aren't going to get a vaccine for a worldwide pandemic until the summer, if then. We also know teachers are not going to be able to get the vaccine for a while because we know in January, probably into February, they're just going to be doing resident care facilities and healthcare workers and first responders. So why upset the apple cart? Why make this change now when you disrupt the relationships, not only of the online students with their teachers, but also with the teachers that you're moving around to take care of the online students? All their kids are going to be disrupted too. Is that really effective, considering we're most likely going to have to spend the majority of the rest of the school year working online, even if we wish it would be different? I can't see that where we are in the red zone now and just recently out of purple, and where the coronavirus has exploded over the entire nation, that this is going to resolve in the next few months. Hopefully by summer it will be a little bit better, but are a couple months or at most of in-person school, if possible, worth causing this level of difficulty for our students? I really wish the district, in making this decision, would not try to use the bean counter approach. I really had praised the district for its decision 4 months ago to give all children the same education and for its flexible approach, because here's what we're doing. We're living through a totally unique period in history. But the question is, where will we be 5 years from now? 5 years from now, it's going to be much more valuable for the 6 kids to have been able to participate in online classes versus attendance being taken and counted. 5 years from now, it's going to be much more valuable for all Centerville students to have gotten a good education, as good as could be had in the pandemic, versus leaving out a percentage of them from a good portion of their education. Treating everybody the same and gets us all further across the finish line together. It's not about where the finish line is this year, but it's about keeping up the progress toward that finish line. You did that in the first 4 months. I request that you not upset the apple cart. Don't disturb these students' relationships. Don't cut down on their learning, whether they're sick or are online. They all deserve the right to be treated equally. I really appreciate Mr. Henderson's, the board's, and everybody else's consideration. I know this is hard for the teachers. I've been one, but we've done it for 4 months. Let's do it for 4 more. And then if we need to revisit the drawing board, let's do it when we have this semester behind us. I thank you.
Dr. Henderson, is that all the hearing of the public?
Yes, Mr. Dahl, that's the end.
Okay. Next item on the agenda is board and administrative reports. First item is legislative report. Sparks.
Thank you. Governor Mike DeWine signed into law Senate Bill 89. The bill revises the law regarding career technical education in joint vocational school districts, changes eligibility requirements for the Education Choice Voucher Program, EdChoice, and a med student's degree completion at state institution of higher education. DeWine also signed into law House Bill 404. The bill extends temporary authorization for members of a public body to hold and attend meetings or hearings via electronic technology, extends the summer food service program regulations, extends license deadlines, extends to the 2021-2022 school year a prohibition against using a value-added data for teacher, principal, or school counselor performance evaluations, and specifies that school districts cannot be penalized for failing to administer diagnostic assessments and health screening if certain factors apply. DeWine vetoed Senate Bill 311. The bill prohibits the Ohio Department of Health, ODH, from issuing a general, mandatory, statewide, or regional quarantine or isolation order that applies to and is enforced against individuals who have not been either directly exposed to or medically diagnosed with the disease that is the subject of the order and allows the General Assembly to adopt a concurrent resolution to rescind certain ODH orders or rules for preventing the spread of contagious or infectious diseases. The Senate passed House Bill 210. The bill requires preschool programs and other entities licensed by the Ohio Department of Education to screen and test prospective employees for tuberculosis, as well as annually test certain employees for a 5-year period. The Senate passed Senate Bill 372. The bill creates the Holocaust and Genocide Memorial and Education Commission that would find appropriate for opportunities to provide resources for schools to effectively teach about the Holocaust and genocide. The Senate Finance Committee amended the bill to align the definition of genocide with the United Nations definition and remove the appropriations. The House State and Local Government Committee helped sponsor testimony on House Bill 398, which establishes the day of each November general election as a legal holiday and provides paid leave to public school employees and other government employees for the day. This committee also held sponsor testimony on House Bill 466, which creates an automatic voter registration system and requires public schools to provide electronic records to the Secretary of State concerning each person who reaches the ages of 16, 17, or 18. Finally, there are a few more hearings scheduled this week concerning House Bill 305, the fair school funding, that was created by Cup Patterson. I will continue to follow that and keep you updated. And that is the end of the report for this month.
Thank you, Mrs. Sparks. You're up again for the student board reports.
Yes, Katie, I don't know where you are on my screen. Katie, where? Oh, Katie, are you guys ready?
We don't have anything new to report this week.
Good job, Katie, and the rest of the kids.
Laura Starber, you're up.
Thank you, Mr. Dahl. And if it's okay with you, I would like to take C and D and flip them around. Mr. Braun has another board meeting actually tonight that he's attending. So Dr. Henderson and I thought it would be a good idea to ask Sam Braun. Sam is a employee at the Shared Resource Center, and we work closely together on several things. One of Sam's expertise is taxes. So before coming to the Shared Resource Center last year, he had worked for many years, I don't know how many, Sam, but for many years at the county auditor's office. And 2020 was a reappraisal year for Montgomery County. And so we asked Sam to come to the board meeting tonight to give us an update.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. If it's all right, I can just share my screen.
Yes, sir.
All right, thank you. Good to be with you virtually. Hope to be with you in person sometime in the future. Was at least encouraged that vaccines are starting today, but I know it'll be a while. So as Laura mentioned, I was with the county auditor's office. It was about 14 years actually. And one of the most important things that the county auditor does is reevaluate property every 3 years. And so 2020 was one of those reappraisal years. And it was a very difficult time, I would say, to do a reappraisal because you're dealing with a pandemic, a recession, and at the same time, a really hot real estate market. And that was the case in Centerville as well as elsewhere in the county. The auditor a couple weeks ago finally released some numbers, final numbers of the impact of this property value update. And it shows big increases in the Centerville School District. Residential values are up about 14%, which was about the same as where they are countywide. Commercial values up about 5%. And overall, it's up about 12%. So definitely a very hot real estate market and very strong numbers for Centerville schools. These values are going to be used to calculate taxes beginning next year, and homeowners will start to see that impact with the tax bills that arrive in January. Now, this was a really rocky reappraisal this year. The county auditor actually came out and released initial values that showed a 7% increase for Centerville schools, but then later amended that to a 14% increase, twice as much. Homeowners were sent notices this summer with the lower proposed value. Some of you may remember having received that notice. Probably would have been like July or something like that, with the tentative value of your property. So what happened here? Why we went from 7% up to suddenly it's 14? Was this a bait and switch? What went on? So what actually happened was the tax commissioner of Ohio rejected the auditor's initial proposal, which was about a 15%. The initial proposal was about a 7% increase countywide. The tax commissioner insisted instead on a 15% increase. And that is why the values went up so much more. The tax commissioner started using a different standard this year. In the past, the county auditor would consider 3 years of sales data. In this case, it would have been 2017, 18, and 19. The tax commissioner, however, insisted in this case on only considering sales from 2019. We don't really know why that is, but that is what happened. And the sales from 2019 were so much stronger than 17 and 18 that it resulted in values going up 14% for Centerville schools instead of 7%. As you might imagine, this created a lot of conflict between the auditor and the tax commissioner. In many counties, they had disagreements that in some cases spilled into the public. But ultimately, the tax commissioner had the final say on this, and the auditors had to go along. Now, if we look at it historically, what this means for Centerville schools, you can see that we have a pretty healthy increases over the last 5 or 6 years. The values for Centerville did go down because of the Great Recession. You can see in 2012, 2013, it was trending down. We have come back and more than made up for that. Clearly, we are on the upswing and in I'd say very good shape in this school district. And that's generally a good thing when values appreciate. It's a sign of a healthy community, a school district where people are wanting to buy property. And so we're generally a good sign when values are going up. And if you're a homeowner, you do want to see your most important asset appreciate in value. Now, I also want to mention new construction here, because new construction is a big part of Centerville's recent history. And if you look at this chart, the gold bars are the new construction each year in the Centerville School District, and the gray bars represent the entire rest of Montgomery County. So you could see that the Centerville School District is a huge part of the counties, of all the new construction in the county. It is generally comprised 30 to 50% of all the new construction in Montgomery County. And again, this is a good sign for the school district. It means people want to live here, values are appreciating, and so we like to see that. Now, the flip side of increase in values, of course, is people are worried, well, what is that going to do to my tax bill? If my value is up 14%, I don't want to see my tax bill going up 14%. So how does this reappraisal impact the tax bills? So what I want to do first is touch on this effective millage. Effective millage is what the homeowners actually pay and the effective millage is impacted by the change in values. When the values go up, the effective millage goes down. So values up, tax rates down. It's an inverse relationship. And this serves to protect homeowners from big tax increases coming from this reappraisal. So with the values rising, we will see the effective tax rates decrease. Because in Ohio law, your voted levies, the revenue from them cannot grow with these property revaluations. Now, there's a couple of small exceptions. They would be inside millage and new construction. So the school district is going to realize a little bit of revenue gain, but it is minimal. We are projecting about 1.5% increase in the operating revenue for Centerville schools. That's really not much. You're really actually not even keeping up with inflation. We expect the effective millage to decrease somewhere around 5 mils. So values up, tax rate down. And so the homeowners within the school district aren't really going to be hit that much from this reappraisal. In fact, the way this will often work is that about a third of the citizens will see an increase in their tax bill. About a third will see what they pay stay the same, and about a third will see a slight decrease in their tax bill. And certainly, if your value is up 14%, your tax bill is not going to be up 14%. It may be up 1 or 2%, a small amount. And there will be people who say, maybe had a 5% increase in their property value. They could actually pay less next year. So that's something to remember. I'm sure citizens are going to have a lot of questions about this, are going to be worried about the tax impact from this reappraisal. And so now you have some of the answers to help you address some of those concerns. Again, revenue wise, it is a minimal bump for Centerville schools, but certainly not a big deal, and certainly not going to be anything like the 14% value increase that is happening. And as we move forward, it looks like the district, the real estate market is in pretty good shape. It's still a hot market. Sales for 2020 continue to be really strong and really hot. So that's about all I have. So I'll take any questions that you might have.
Can we please get a copy of this presentation?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep, I can send that out, Megan. No problem.
Thanks, Laura.
Sam, could I ask you a question, please?
Yes, please.
I don't understand what is the reality of why the tax commissioner would have just chosen 2019 sales to evaluate property values. It would seem that's another political grab. To me personally, not speaking for the board or anything like that, but manipulating interest rates and doing all of these things. I see it as a political scheme and not letting the market determine what the actual value is. And again, in my opinion, in the long term, the market always does win.
Okay, well, we don't know the reason for why they changed their methods. I can't really think of any good reason, though, because it doesn't benefit the tax commissioner or the state of Ohio at all. They don't receive any revenue from it. They have no benefit in the values being higher. And as I've outlined, it really doesn't do a whole lot for anybody's revenue because the only gains would be on the inside millage. So I don't know. Well,
once you start going down this road, it's tough to turn around and go back. I hate to see that. Thank you.
Yeah, hopefully 2023 will be a lot smoother the next time they update values.
Thank you.
Sam, has the tax commissioner given any guidance as to this is how their office will be calculating it going forward? So in 2023, we aren't looking at a similar issue where we get lower valuations and they get bumped up again. Is this the idea of being caught off guard by it? Is that hopefully a one and done scenario?
I would hope so, but you know, I don't know. Really, I think this surprised everyone, including the auditor, and some of the auditors have been publicly very critical of the tax commissioner. But yeah, I can't really answer what they're going to do in the future. And what they did this year really goes against, 50 years of precedent.
And this happens statewide. This is not necessarily unique to Montgomery County, correct?
Yes, my understanding is there are some auditors that are still fighting with the tax commissioner over it.
Okay.
If you were to look, some of them are don't want to be vocal about it, but others do. So I won't out any of them here.
I thought I read that the commissioner actually wanted Montgomery County closer to 17. So the 14 that we're getting, 14 or 15 that we're getting is actually the compromised.
Yeah, I believe that's right. I think they told them 18 at one point, and they went back and forth and came back to 14, 15.
So it could be worse.
I suppose. Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
Sam, this is John. You think this is be used as a way to allocate less money to the districts that have high property values? Taking that in consideration when we get our year budget money coming here?
I would certainly hope not. I would certainly hope not. I mean, you can spin a lot of different conspiracy theories on it. I don't know the answer. I don't know. They've already cut, foundation some because of COVID.
We took our share of cuts because of that. I'm just wondering, because property values is a factor they look at, well as income and those type of things.
Yes, I will say though, they went up across the board at least. And in fact, in this case, it's a lot of, Centerville did fairly well coming through the Great Recession. Some of the other places, like in the urban and the rural areas that didn't do so well in the Great Recession, they're the ones that are up even more, that are up, 15 to 20%.
Thank you.
Of course.
Anybody else got any questions for Sam? Sam, I know you got another meeting. Thanks for attending. We appreciate all your input and look forward to hearing from you again.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Sam.
Sauber?
Thank you. And that was good information from Sam. And the majority of my report is the information that Sam gave us tonight. But I did just want to touch on a couple of items that you'll be asked to approve in Section 7 under the Treasurer's recommendations. Again, I've zoomed in a little bit so that the numbers are a little bit larger, but this is our look of where are we at with our revenues and where are we at with our expenses. At a high level, we're about $1.8 million behind revenue estimates. But I did talk about that last month, if you remember, about the split in the property taxes of just the timing of that. So we hope for a rebound in that here in the coming months with the second collection of the year. And then on the expense side, we're running a little bit under budget, about $850,000 under budget. And I'm working on a few things to put together for you for the January report once we'll be 6 months through, so that we can take a closer look at some of these areas. I just want to point a few specific items out, but nothing real notable tonight. We're working hard in my office right now, working with Mr. Westney in the curriculum department to finish spending up our CARES money, because we have a deadline on that of December 30th. So that's where a lot of our attention is focused. right now. One other item just to point out quickly is the fund activity report. I don't know if you noticed it or not. Hopefully my screen switched. Whoops, sorry. But we are running quite a deficit in our lunchroom account. We had started to rebound that and had a really good collection in November. And I think December's collection actually will be good too when I report that out. But the fund balance is running negative by quite a bit. Mr. Westney and I are starting to talk about that, but that is something that I do want to just have a conversation a little bit more detailed about in January. I'm even considering talking with the administration about a mid-year transfer from our general fund into our food service fund. We normally would wait until the end of the year, but I'm not too sure if we can recoup quite that much. And so just for a discussion point at this point, we wouldn't have to be board approving anything in January yet, but we may consider at least a portion of that so that we're not running quite so far negative. So it's just one of the repercussions of the pandemic and being remote and not having those collections. So where we're making up in some of our operations in terms of, say, bus fuel, for transportation, we don't have the buses out on the road every day, but it's making us run behind in other areas that we have to take into consideration. So all of these things just continue to evolve. It's truly a year like no other that we're dealing with, and the finances are the same, honestly.
Hey, Laura, considering the fact that the odds that the food service area is going to actually get better over the next 4 to 6 months is being slim and none, it's probably a good idea to start really moving that money over, because it is not going to improve if we're not going to get kids back and they're not going to be eating. Obviously we don't know what's going to happen, but I'm comfortable not waiting and moving it over because it's a needed area. And again, we're using a lot of that money to still provide meals to kids. And that's where that money's going. And, a lot of people think the kids aren't in school, we're not using it, why do we need the money? But the reality is most people don't realize we are providing meals as we're sort of required to do and want to do. So it's going to a good thing. So, feel free, from my perspective, is to put it on the agenda.
Okay, yeah, we'll talk about that at the administrative level once the calendar year changes here, and then we'll bring it back at the work session for sure, and then potentially for the regular meeting have a transfer then. Anything we can do to get the families when we are remote to get the lunches at our stops, get the reimbursement for that. It has been approved at the federal level to give every student a free meal. And then we get the reimbursement if they take the meal, but only if they take the meal. And so anyone that wants or needs that lunch, we encourage them to contact their buildings to arrange that.
Laura, that's for all families. That's not just the families who are on free or reduced lunches. That's any child in Centerville. So if you sign up for that program, it's actually helping our district. You're not taking it away from a child in need. I think that was a big conception out there in the community. Like, I don't want to take it away from someone else, but it's actually helping our district if you sign up for that program. Correct?
That's correct. Yes, it's definitely not taking food away from families that can't afford it. It is truly providing a free meal to every kid. So yes, you're correct, Megan.
Anything else, Laura?
No, that's it for me. Thank you.
Anderson?
Thank you, Mr. Dahl. Mr. Westney is going to go next, and just even though we've written this information to you and discussed it previously, he's going to talk a little bit about the Tower Heights HVAC project. So, John, I'll turn it over to you.
Good evening, everyone. Just as Dr. Henderson said, I want to provide just a summary of the bid results from last week. Last Tuesday, December the 8th, we had 7 contractors submit bid proposals for the 9 rooftop units we plan to replace at Tower Heights. A wide range of results on those proposals. You saw in the information that's in your board packet, the highest contracted bid came in at $1,187,000. with the lowest proposal coming in at $960,336. So Fry Mechanical provided the lowest bid. You may recall Fry Mechanical provided some work for us back in the summer of 2019 when they came in and replaced 18 of our classroom heating and cooling units at John Hall, Normandy, and Stingley. So they've done some work for us in the past, and they've been a good group for us to work for. You might wonder why the estimate came in so good for the district. The biggest part of this project has to do with the equipment cost. And we were able to find some different ways to reduce some of that cost. For example, currently at Tower Heights, 4 of the rooftop units have a heat wheel, which is just a feature 20 years ago that was still used in a lot of heating and cooling systems. We found out we could get the new units without that cooling wheel, which is a little bit lighter of a device unit. I mean, these are still pretty large units, but it helped bring down the cost of those units for this project. So exciting the fact that it's $380,000 less than the original estimate of about $1.3 million. So with your approval tonight, one of the last items on the agenda is to consider the lowest and best bid, and that's with Fry Mechanical to replace the 9 rooftop units at Tower Heights Middle School. Any questions for me in regards to that project? Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Jonathan.
So, Mr. Dahl, I'd like to go last on the reports tonight, and I really just wanted to make some comments, as we head into the holidays and look forward to January and the plan to get back into school in person. So, as you all know, flexibility has certainly been essential this school year. We've faced one challenge after another, just like everybody has, across the Miami Valley, across the state, across the nation, and really across the world. And, our transition back to remote learning for this time period that we're currently in is really just another reminder that we still are in a very major and dangerous pandemic. The ongoing stress of constant change and the wishing for what we are missing, being around others and family and socializing, continues to weigh heavy on all of us, especially in the midst of these holiday seasons. I know we all miss our families, and we're all doing everything we can to make good, safe decisions and stay safe. Even so, our teachers have continued to work very hard. I think you've heard a couple speakers here tonight that have praised our teachers, and they definitely deserve that praise because they have worked very hard to keep learning, to move forward by focusing on students' mindsets and engagement while valuing effort and growth. At the middle and high school level, we have made some changes. We're now requiring all students to have their cameras turned on to encourage better engagement. There was a time in the first quarter where students were not turning their cameras on or getting in the habit of not turning their cameras on. And we've enlisted the help from our parents to help us remedy that. And we've seen great gains because students now are more engaged and more focused. We've also set aside time in the schedule for small group and one-on-one intervention at the upper levels. At the K-5 levels, teachers are continuing to start their day in what they refer to as their morning meeting. This is kind of an assembly, kind of like exactly that, a morning meeting where the teachers spend time just working with their students remotely and building those relationships and working hard just to have talking time and things like that. And it helps build community and prepare for the day's learning activities. So now as we look towards the second semester and our plans to return that Tuesday after Martin Luther King Day on January the 19th, I did want to share with you some of the things that we're working on. And I've shared some of these things with you before, but just wanted to again bring those up and out in the public. First of all, you've probably been aware that the Centerville for Disease Control, the CDC, has been spending time looking at the quarantine rules and protocols surrounding what happens when somebody has a positive COVID case and or has a direct exposure. The contact tracing is a huge endeavor and obviously affects many, many, many people many students and staff in regards to that 14-day quarantine. We know that the CDC would make a recommendation that the 14 days is probably the safest and best length of time to stay out if you've got a direct exposure or test positive for COVID. But they are now offering some opportunities and some ways that those quarantines can be reduced, 10 days or 7 days based on circumstances and situations, and also dependent on test results and symptoms. So, we're still working through some of that, but that is something that has been a change that's come out recently. And I know that's been out and hit the news here just recently. Next, we're looking to make some changes for students in grades 2 through 5 who will continue with fully remote learning when in-person instruction resumes. Families of the K-5 students who had previously chosen that remote learning option, they've actually received a couple emails, 2 emails from our curriculum department regarding the learning option for parents about whether or not they want to make a decision to stay with the remote learning or to make a choice to come back in person. So we still have a few families that have not responded, and we were going to enlist the help of our principals to reach out and make those contacts of our families here between now and Friday before we break for the winter break. So we'll have a good option and a good understanding of what those numbers look like. Basically, though, we are looking to change that up a little bit. Mrs. Hanson is right. We again believe that, having Centerville teachers teach Centerville curriculum remotely has been a good thing, but it has also not worked well for other children in other situations too. So we're trying to actually enhance and do better in what we're doing in regards to instruction for our 2 through 5 children when we come back in January. I know Cherie can give just some brief information about what the changes or how that's going to look a little bit before I move on with some of my comments. So Cherie, you want to jump in there?
Thank you, Dr. Henderson. Thank you, Dr. Henderson. As you all know, in second quarter, when we transitioned to in-person, we asked our 2nd through 5th grade teachers to teach both our in-person students and our remote students. And while they did a fantastic job, what we learned in that endeavor was that designing instruction for both remote and in-person students at the same time, really for our age level of students and the kind of instruction we need to present and to share really isn't optimal. And so as we were looking at moving into second semester and families needing to recommit to what their plans were, we looked at pulling those students that want to stay remote separate. And so we would have teachers from our buildings. We're going to look at numbers and see where we can get those teachers. They will be teaching the remote students, and then the in-person students would be with in-person teachers. So teachers wouldn't be splitting their attention between both remote and in-person students at the same time. We believe this will provide the best quality of instruction for both kinds of students and allow us to continue meeting the needs of all of our families who have the need for remote or want to come back in person. It allows us to use our own staff. We're looking carefully at those numbers, and that's our plan at this point in time.
Sherry, just a quick question. What the woman was talking about 40 or 50 ratio. What is that all about?
So in order to do this, the class sizes will be larger. The instruction is designed a little bit differently. One of the things we have to be careful of is when we pull teachers from our PTRs and things for remote instruction, during the pandemic, we don't want to make our class sizes in person extra large either. And so just trying to make sure that we're making the best. They're going to be teams of teachers, so they're going to employ a little bit more of a team teaching approach. And so focusing on one subject and sharing students with another teacher, obviously with lots of support from the curriculum department.
Cherie, wasn't this done a little bit that way in the primary villages?
Yes, at the end of first quarter, when we were figuring out exactly what the remote would look like, for the age and the development of our K and 1 students, we pulled them off separately and have remote teachers that are teaching them. That has appeared to work very well in those situations.
So it will be along those same lines?
Yes.
Okay, gotcha. Thank you.
Cherie, the speaker also mentioned an inflexibility, if you will, for those who are remaining in person if they're quarantined or out sick, whereas previously they would have Zoomed in. My understanding was that she was led to believe that that is not the case. Can you clarify that?
We are not going to ask our teachers to have remote students Zoom in. We're going to or quarantine students to Zoom in. We're actually going to make sure that we keep them up to date through their Google Classrooms or by dropping work off at their porches. And so that layer of teaching both remote and in person, quarantined or remote kids at the same time just really has not been effective. And so the Google Classrooms will keep up with lessons and the work, or we will have actual paper things that are dropped off at homes.
And if there's face-to-face necessary, will that Wednesday afternoon time be utilized for that? If a student, I'm thinking like if a student is quarantined for the full 10 to 14 days, whatever the final determination is, that's a long time to not have face-to-face with your teacher. So that Wednesday would be utilized for that?
There are some flexible times within the day we've talked about in terms of ways for the teacher to connect with that kiddo and make sure that they understand all the pieces and parts that are happening. But videos would likely be part of what would be happening too, so that the teacher would still be providing some of that instruction, just not live.
And we're still meeting the requirements as far as hours of instruction and whatnot. It would be like a blizzard bag type situation.
Correct.
Okay.
And really with remote learning, it's not an hour for hour exchange with in-person learning. When you're learning remotely, you can be a lot more efficient. So what the work takes you as long as it takes you. You don't have to wait for any of your classmates to finish theirs before you move on and those kinds of things. And so, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Cherie. So we have been working hard preparing for the second semester. We're continuing, to assess and reassess and study and make sure that we're ready to go on January the 19th. So the last thing really I wanted to say is that, it has been very, very challenging. We all kind of long for that back to normal. And like one of the speakers said, it was, I know it was uplifting, at least for me, to hear and to see that the vaccines did arrive today in Ohio. And I do understand that it's going to be a while and it's going to take some time, obviously, but it is uplifting. It does seem very much like there is a light at the end of the tunnel now. And it was kind of renewing and maybe rejuvenating for myself to see that kind of news. And like I said, I do know it's going to be a little while, but I know it's been tough for our families and our parents and our students and really for everybody during these holiday times. So, I just want and hope and wish that all of our families have a great holiday and that they have a safe holiday and that they make good decisions. And we're looking forward to doing everything we can to get our kids back in person as soon as possible. So those were just the comments that I wanted to make as we're looking towards the second semester when we return in January. The last thing I wanted to do is I just really wanted to kind of give a virtual high five or a virtual handshake to Mr. Dahl. The board knows and understands from the traditions that we have on the Board of Education here in Centerville City Schools that every year a president is elected to serve in that leadership role of the 5 elected officials. And Mr. Dahl, when he accepted that position last January, I'm sure he had no idea, like any of us, that he'd be leading this great school district during this unbelievable pandemic. But he has done an amazing job of leading the Board of Education and all of us here in Centerville City Schools, and we greatly appreciate everything that he has done. And obviously not leaving the board, but just will be moving out of that role as being board president. So again, a high five to Mr. Dahl and a virtual applause and a standing ovation. Or I am standing, so we want to thank you, Mr. Dahl, for all of your efforts in leading us. There is, and this isn't remote, but there is a little a token of our appreciation that's coming in the mail to you that you'll receive in a couple days, depending on the mail, the U.S. mail. And again, we want to thank you for your leadership and everything that you've done for this unprecedented year that we've been through. And thank you for hanging in there with all of us as well. So thank you for that.
Thank you very much. It was, a good-
Great job, John. Thank you.
Thank you. It's one of those things that we all work as a team, all the board members and all the administration team. We've got one goal, and that is to do what is in the best interest of our students, staff, and our community. As long as we have that focus, well. Okay, next item on the agenda is treasurer's recommendations. Are we ready for that, Laura?
Yes.
Okay, the motion approving November 2020 financial statements, monthly general fund rolling report, monthly general fund breakdown, monthly cash reconciliation, monthly fund activity report, then and now purchase orders approved by administration, certified by the treasurer, supported by board resolution totaling $92,457.30.
So moved.
Second.
Roll, please.
Mrs. Dernbaugh,
Yes.
Dr. Rohr,
Yes.
Mr. Schreier,
Yes.
Megan Sparks,
Yes.
Mr. Dahl.
Yes. The motion to consider a resolution to authorize the treasurer to request advance payment of taxes when available during 2021.
So moved.
Second.
Call the roll, please.
Mrs. Dernbaugh,
Yes.
Dr. Rohr,
Yes.
Mr. Schreier,
Yes.
Megan Sparks,
Yes.
Mr. Dahl.
Yes. Motion to consider approving the minutes of the following Board of Education meeting, November 23, 2020, regular meeting.
So moved.
Second.
The roll, please.
Mrs. Dernbaugh,
Yes.
Dr. Rohr,
Yes.
Mr. Schreier,
Yes.
Megan Sparks,
Yes.
Mr. Dahl.
Yes. We have the schedules. We can take all of them together except for Schedule B1. Is that right, Dr. Henderson?
That's correct, Mr. Dahl. Yes.
The motion to accept the superintendent recommendation of accepting resignations is listed on Schedule A. Superintendent recommendation recommends the employment, change of employment status, or change of contract status for the certificated personnel listed on Schedule B, the salaries, programs, and the effective dates given. Superintendent recommends the employment or change of employment status for the support staff personnel listed on Schedule C for the salaries, programs, and on the effective dates given. Superintendent recommends the employment of the personnel listed on Schedules D and D1 for supplemental contracts for extra duty assignments. The superintendent recommends the granting of leaves of absence for personnel listed on Schedule E for the reasons and on the dates given.
So moved.
Second.
Call the roll, please.
Mrs. Dernbaugh,
Yes.
Dr. Rohr,
Yes.
Mr. Schreier,
Yes.
Megan Sparks,
Yes.
Mr. Dahl.
Yes. The motion for the following, superintendent recommends the employment, change of employment status, change in contract status for certificated personnel listed on Schedule B1 for the salaries, programs on the effective dates.
So moved.
Second.
Call the roll, please.
Mrs. Dernbaugh,
Yes.
Dr. Rohr,
Yes.
Mr. Schreier,
Yes.
Megan Sparks,
Abstain, please.
Mr. Dahl.
Yes. Consider a resolution in accordance with Ohio's civil service laws, regularly assigned days and hours of classified employees and consistent with the operation of Ohio Revised Code, Section 3319.081. Treasurer shall pay classified employees their regular rate for their normally scheduled hours during any period of remote student instruction, so long as these employees are able for work assigned by district administration. Motion, please.
So moved.
Second.
Call the roll, please.
Mrs. Dernbaugh,
Yes.
Dr. Rohr,
Yes.
Mr. Schreier,
Yes.
Megan Sparks,
Yes.
Mr. Dahl.
Yes. Motion to consider accepting the lowest and best bid for the procurement and installation of rooftop HVAC units from Fry Mechanical, a total cost of $960,336.
So moved.
Second.
Call the roll, please.
Mrs. Dernbach?
Yes.
Dr. Rohr?
Yes.
Mr. Schroyer?
Yes.
Megan Sparks?
Yes.
Mr. Dahl?
Yes. Anybody else got anything we want to talk about before we adjourn?
Nope.
Comments? Hearing none. Motion to adjourn, please.
So moved.
Second.
Call the roll.
Mrs. Dernbach?
Yes.
Dr. Rohr?
Yes.
Mr. Schroyer?
Yes.
Megan Sparks?
Yes.
Mr. Dahl?
Yes. Thanks, everybody. Happy holidays.
Happy holidays, y'all.
Thank
January.
you. Happy holidays.
Bye-bye.